Hello, this is Erick Widman from Passage Immigration Law, and I am very excited to do this video because if you're watching this, it means you have found a special someone outside the US who you plan to marry if you're a US citizen, or you might be that special someone who happens to live outside the US who's met a nice US citizen. And I personally have gone down this path, experienced this journey of marrying a non-citizen, a woman from Hungary, and I highly recommend it. You will experience a life full of adventure and richness that you will never regret. Take it from me. So I'll do this too. Here's a picture of her and my little girl. We've been married over 16 years. So the first thing to understand about the K-1 visa is that it is a non-immigrant visa that allows a US citizen to petition for a fiancé to come into the US and get married within 90 days. You do have to be a US citizen to file this petition. You can't be a green card holder. You do have to marry, if you're the foreign national fiancé, you do have to marry the person who petitioned for you. You can't marry someone else. And you have to do it within 90 days. You can't wait and get to know each other at that point and then decide. Okay, so what are the key steps, the broad overview for getting a K-1 visa? You have to work first with USCIS to file a petition. It's Form I-129F. The US citizen petitioner files that with USCIS, and it's taking, on average, 5 months to get approved. After the petition's approved, USCIS forwards it over to the US Department of State through the National Visa Center over to the US Embassy or consulate where your foreign national fiancé is located. And then, working with the Department of State, your fiancé outside the US has to file Form DS-160 online. That is something you can do completely online. You don't have to file any paper for that. Even the filing fees are handled online. After that is approved, after some other documentation is sent in to the embassy via the National Visa Center, such as a police certificate, your birth certificate, proof of your identity, and related documentation, you are ready for the interview to be set up. Oftentimes the interview is set up 9 months from the point the initial petition was filed, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but the embassy will let you know when you're supposed to come in for your interview, and at that point you have to bring in more documentation. So to prepare for the consular interview at the embassy or consulate where the foreign national fiancé has to go to, there's several key things you need to bring in. You're going to have to bring in your medical exam, which will be completed at a designated physician's office, the panel physician designated by the embassy. You have to also bring in Form I-134, which is an affidavit of support that the US citizen petitioner fills out that shows the petitioner has a job or assets that will allow him or her to support you, the foreign national, when you come into the US. And you also want to bring in evidence of your genuine relationship that show you have met each other in person, you're intending to get married, and you've been keeping in touch over the period of time you've been getting to know each other, and you have a genuine or bona fide relationship. This information is assessed by the consular officer at the interview, often within a few minutes, and you find out, typically right away, if you're getting approved or not. The US citizen petitioner usually has to be located in the US, and his or her domicile has to be in the US while this process is ongoing. But If you can show that even though the US citizen is living outside the US, perhaps in the same country as the fiancé, if the US citizen is reestablishing his or her domicile in the US and has proof of that, that will usually satisfy the consular officer. After the foreign national has completed his or her interview, she'll find out right away, in most cases, that she's been approved if all the documentation has been submitted correctly. Then the foreign national will get a visa stamp in her passport, which will allow her to come into the US usually in 6 months from the time the visa is issued. Check the validity date of the visa, because we've seen some that are only good for 3 months, and you, the foreign national, can decide to travel whenever the visa is valid, and you come into the US. You can only enter once on your K-1 visa, and you've got to get married within 90 days to the one who petitioned for you. We recommend that you plan things out so that you get married as soon as possible, even if you're just getting legally married as soon as possible. If you have your ceremony later, that will allow you to get an EAD, a work permit, faster, and the ability to travel internationally again through the next stage, which is called adjustment of status, to get the fiancé a green card. You certainly need a green card for the long term to work and live in the US. The green card you're going to get, though, is a conditional one that's just good for 2 years. So we'll talk about that in the final step. After the foreign national fiancé has gotten married and applied to adjust status, she'll receive a 2-year green card, roughly 9 months on average from the time you apply for that. You will get, though, a work permit, an EAD, and a travel permit called advance parole if you apply for those, as we highly recommend you do, as a part of your adjustment of status process. The 2-year green card will be issued, if everything's done correctly, for 2 years from the time of the interview, roughly. And then you have to remove conditions through Form I-751 3 months prior to the 2-year expiration of your conditional green card. So a year plus 9 months is when you should apply to have the conditions removed and get a permanent 10-year green card. After that, you can start looking into citizenship for your fiancé, who's now your wife, and you can get even more certainty in your life together at that point. Hope this was helpful.